Welcome to In Isolation, the weekly webcast that's your best friend during the apocalypse. Your best friend. I'm James Kerwin, and with me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, Nicola Bryant. Hello, Nicola.
Hello.
How you been?
Good. Yeah. I say that because I was bad and now I'm good. I did that thing where you just suddenly are on a completely different timetable because it makes no difference.
Oh, yeah.
I was doing all that, going to bed about 1 o'clock in the morning, getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and just doing stuff till about 6 o'clock in the morning, then getting a couple hours sleep and getting up to do the day. But I had a full night's sleep last night and I'm sort of on track. But seeing as we're recording quite late, I may not be.
Late for you, relatively early for me.
Yeah.
I actually had a full night's sleep last night, too, for the first time in quite a while. I mean, yeah, isolation really does mess with your schedule, definitely.
But I've got my mum to kind of keep me on schedule. And so, yeah, because she needs to be in bed by a certain time and she's on some antibiotics at the moment 4 times a day. So we have to kind of make everything work around that. So. And Marnie is still with us. Episode 4, she's still here. And Harvey is, of course, taking care of my mom.
I'm starting to think that Marnie has never moved from that bed in the 4 weeks we've been doing this show.
Oh, she was playing like a mad girl on the lawn today. And sunbathing right next to me while I was working in the garden. And then we took a good walk on the heath till it was dark. And that it wasn't dark until after 8 o'clock tonight. So that's great. I love the long evenings as they start to approach.
Yeah, we're starting to get those over here. Not nearly as much as you guys have over there, but starting to get them here too. So that's nice.
It's when finally being this far north pays off.
So this week we figured we would talk about. Last week we talked about potential future projects. This week we figured we'd visit the past and talk about certain things that we've done in the past. Not just film and television, though, also theater. Theater is something that often gets overlooked, particularly over here in the United States. It's a great discipline. It's a great art form in and of itself. I've been involved in it for a bit. Nicola, you've been involved in quite a bit of theater.
I have, yes. And I've also been lucky enough to be in the West End 3 times. So that's great. That was very exciting.
That's amazing. So do you have any stories, any unexpected stories, and unexpected surprises, things that happened to you in your theater career?
Yeah, a surprise is kind of our theme tonight, as well as theatre. I was auditioning for a show that was my first West End show, but I was auditioning for it. And there was a lot of people in the waiting room. And there was this guy that I started talking to, an American, and he was auditioning for it. And he was going to be in another show, which was a 3-hander. And I didn't know how we got onto the subject, but somehow we did. And it was the story of the lives of F. Scott Fitzgerald, Zelda Fitzgerald, and Ernest Hemingway. And it was called Lost in Exile. It was written by a man I would now call my friend, Paul Ryan. And he started telling me about it. And I was like, oh wow, that sounds great. And that project was literally about to start soon and would be finished by the time this West End play opened. So I was very keen, very interested. And so he said, well, I'll meet you after your audition. And we went for coffee and we had a long chat. And I said, I'd really love to play it. And he went, kind of, bless you, but, how old are you? It's her life story. So you've got to play from your age now to 45, 50. And I don't think you can do that. And I was like, I can. And he was like, no, I mean, I get your enthusiasm and etc., but I don't think. And he was going to be playing F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Okay.
So that was the end of that. I thought about it all the time, but I knew that I wasn't going to have this part, and I knew somebody else was cast. And then I got this phone call. It was about 11 o'clock at night. I know I'd gone to bed. And it was the playwright, Paul Ryan.
Really?
And he said, look, apparently you expressed a lot of interest in this play. And I was like, yes. And he said, the thing is, our actress is ill, really ill. And we open, and I think it was less than 48 hours. So he was like, would you be interested in taking over?
That is insane.
It is, especially as it was 48 hours. And I was like, yes, yes, you know, youth.
You've got 2 days to memorize an entire play along with the blocking, everything.
So obviously I jumped out of bed and drove from where I lived then in Putney into the other side of West London. So I up little corridors and knocked on this strange door, and there was this man who gave me a script. And then I drove all the way home, and then I sat up all night reading the script, and then I just started crying. And my then husband said, what is it? Is it terrible? And I went, no, it's just beautiful. It's gorgeous. This is just the kind of part I want to play. The lucky thing is I knew Zelda's story. So I knew all the background. Everything that I said made sense. It kind of followed in a flow. So I went to the rehearsal. We did some really basic blocking because they basically said, we'll work around you. We did some very basic stuff. The director was amazing. He was so brilliant at handling what could have been a situation where someone could have just ended up going, I can't do this. But he was very gentle and said, don't worry, we'll just all work around you. It's all cool, you know.
It's great. It's great.
I'm trying to get this around because in the middle of all that, I had a car crash, like a really serious car crash at one point.
Wait, what? Like during those 2 days, you had a car crash?
I can't remember if it was the night of the opening or one of the days of the run. Anyway, it was just like chocker, major car crash. I was sandwiched between two lots of cars in a tiny little sports car, and I literally crawled out, and everyone was saying, stay. And I was like, no, I got to get to a phone box. I ran to a phone box saying, I'll be there. So yeah, and then we opened, and apparently I only got like one line wrong. I skipped something a bit.
Okay.
And what was really interesting was that two of the actors I was about to work with, because I got the role in the West End show, were in the audience. So when I started on my West End show, Killing Jessica, two of them came up to me at the reading. My first West End, I'm so nervous. I don't feel, am I up to this? And everyone else is so experienced and famous and everything. And I was feeling really insecure. And two of the other actors, including the guy who was playing my boyfriend, came up and said, I saw you in Lost in Exile. You were amazing. And I was like, I don't think anybody saw that really, because it was a tiny little show. But two of the cast had seen it, and it was great. It was a very meant to be. Don't ask me how I learnt it and did it. Youth, adrenaline, confidence. Couldn't do it now.
I have an eerily similar theater story to that. Eerily similar, actually.
Oh.
Which brings me to a kind of a side point. Which I alluded to earlier, that theater, not so much in New York, but unfortunately in Los Angeles, theater is kind of viewed as like an underdog, like almost like it's a stepping stone to doing film and television, but it's not really a thing in and of itself, which is really unfortunate because I love theater as an art form, and it's a distinct art form, and it just requires distinct skills both as a director and as an actor. That are separate from the skill set that you use in television and film, and it gets a lot more respect over there, I think, than it does over here. I have not been involved in an enormous amount of theater, by the time I moved out to Los Angeles. My degree was in film, but I had been involved in theater when I was in college at university, as you guys would say.
Yes.
But I hadn't done a lot of professional theater since I had left university. But after I moved out to Los Angeles, I got involved directing for a great theater company called the Blank Theater Company in Hollywood. They do plays at various stages around town. The second stage, their main theater. They do plays at the Stella Adler, all around Los Angeles. It's just an absolutely wonderful company. And I still direct for them from time to time. But simultaneously, like in the early 2000s, I was the co-chairman of another theater company called Lone Star Ensemble. And we did plays that maybe other places wouldn't do. And at one point we did, one of my favorite things I did there, at one point we did an obscure Shakespeare piece called Venus and Adonis, which you very rarely see or hear about. So we did it kind of like The Matrix. We did.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, we did it set in the future in kind of a cyberpunk reality in which Adonis he had full like virtual reality gear. This was before the Oculus was around, but he had like full virtual reality gear and a whole cyberpunk set. And he would go into this game and he would, like an MMORPG game, and he would fight the boar. And then Venus would go into her virtual reality set and fight and go and pursue him. And we had a screen above the theater, above the stage, where we actually hired a CGI company to render out the video game. So as the actors are playing the game in their virtual reality with their controllers and things, you see it up on the screen at the same time.
Oh, interesting.
And then the entire set spun around, like literally rotated, and it turned into Venus's boudoir, which was this Greco-Roman palace with columns and all white and statuary and everything. It was quite a feat, I must say. I really enjoyed doing that. But here's where I'm going with the story. Another play that we did, this one I did not direct. We had brought in an outside director to direct this, was Tony Kushner's The Illusion. And if you're familiar with The Illusion, it's a play about a lawyer named Piedmont kind of coming to terms with his relationship with his son. And because I was one of the producers of this piece, but I was not heavily involved in the mounting of it. I had gone to a couple of the rehearsals, gone to opening night, but I wasn't super familiar with it because I didn't direct it. Well, a little ways into the run of the play, and again, this is so funny how similar this is to your story. But a little ways into the run of the play, I get a call from my friend who's the chairman of the theater company. And he says, so our actor, our Piedmont, just booked either a film or a TV show or something like that. I don't remember what it was. And so he has to leave the production, at least for the next few performances. He's going to be gone. It's like, do we have an understudy? No, we don't have an understudy for that role. So I said, well, we're going to have to go dark. And he says, I've got a better idea. Why don't you play Piedmont?
Wow.
So for some reason, and to this day, I don't know what I was thinking, but I said yes. So I had a little more time than you, not a little more than 48 hours. I think it was 3 or 4 days, but it was another similar situation. I had a few days. I had to memorize the entire play, rehearse with the cast, get the blocking down, and play Piedmont in The Illusion. And I had the idea that since he's a lawyer, he would have like a little notebook with him all the time where he'd be taking notes about things that he's observing. And so I cheated and I Xeroxed the pages of the script and I put them in the notebook. So in case I went up on my lines, I could like refer to it, which I only had to do a couple of times actually. But that was a crazy experience. So I know kind of how you feel having to jump into a role at the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really.
So what else? You talked about doing the West End. What can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was in this thriller. It was my first West End role after doing Doctor Who, and I played at the Savoy Theatre, beautiful theatre, and that was before it was burned down. I used to make jokes that was me, no. And it was the following production that burned the theatre down, and then they redid it. So we had this freezing cold winter. And when we got there was no water because all the pipes had frozen. It was this really old Victorian building. And yeah, but it was great. I had Patrick Macnee as the leading man.
Ooh.
Yeah. And he was adorable. He was so nice to me, so sweet. And directed by Brian Forbes, fantastic guy. We had Jenny Linden, who I became friends with there. And then we had our Doctor Who connection. And myself, Jenny, and there was like 5 of us playing the cast of a play within a play within a play.
Ah.
And it was written by Leveson and Link, who did all of Columbo. I had David Langton, from the British audience would know him from Upstairs, Downstairs, particularly. He was also one of the leading men. So it was great. I mean, I was in the West End at the Savoy Theatre, and I was playing what Brian Forbes had described as a bit of a Joan Collins role, in that I was playing this young, naive ingenue at the beginning of this play, who's in this terrible West sort of Broadway flop, and it's their opening night. That's how the play begins. And then there is a death. The leading lady dies, and immediately I take over her role.
Ah.
And so you see all the characters a year later. And now I'm kind of very confident, a little bit kick-ass, a little bit, I've ditched my boyfriend from before, and it's all about trying to find out who the murderer is. But it's a trap. We're rehearsing this play and we're working on it. But what we're actually doing is trapping the person who we know the murderer is.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So
the play's the thing.
I would toss a coin in the wings every night with the guy who basically played my boyfriend. And we would go, heads, you're guilty. Tails, I'm guilty, And we would play the whole of the play to those like 2 key lines we had, where I would be cross-examined and they would say, so this policeman's come in and he said, so you say you guys are each other's alibi, but was he there all night? And I have this choice where I say, well, yes, but I did wake up. And so I can play the I did wake up and he wasn't there, either as a complete lie because I'm stitching him up, or as the horrible realization that my boyfriend is probably the murderer, which kept it really fresh. So we would be playing the whole evening as though I'm about to be shocked that my boyfriend's a murderer, or I'm about to stab him in the back.
Wow.
It was great fun. Great fun.
So, Nicola, I think that about brings us to the point in the webcast where we take viewer questions and comments on the air. How about it?
Great. Love this part.
Yeah, so we encourage all of our audience members, anybody who's watching and enjoying in isolation or not enjoying in isolation, to hit us up via Twitter using the hashtag #InIsolation. Both of our Twitter handles are in the end credits of these episodes, or on our YouTube channel in the comments underneath the videos. You can post a question, you can post a comment, and from time to time we will take one and read it on the air in a segment we like to call Voices from Isolation. This week, our question is via YouTube from user Mickey Chitty, who says, if in 1984 you were offered the part of the 6th Doctor rather than Perry after auditioning, would you have said yes? Wow, what a question. So Nicola, what's the answer?
That's a great question. And nobody's ever asked me that question before. And after all these years, that's quite unusual. Wow, yes. Yes, I would. How would that have worked? Would I have been Perry first? I guess they would have said, haha, you thought you were auditioning for a companion, but in fact, you were auditioning for the Doctor. I'd have been terrified, straight out of drama school to become the Doctor. But yes, I would have accepted it. Gladly, gleefully, terrifiedly, shakily, happily, because that's what you do with opportunity. You seize it. And I'm now placing myself out there available for any future incarnations of the Doctor. That would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
I'm wearing my Cybermen earrings. So That's how geeky and weird I am.
Wow.
So thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've got any suggestions as to topics for our In Isolation chats, this week was surprises, feel free to leave suggestions at the YouTube channel. And take care. Mwah.